Nearly 70% of lottery winners end up broke within 5 years. Not just back to zero. Some of them end up worse off than before they won, deeper in debt, more isolated, more miserable. Some of them publicly say winning the lottery was the worst thing that ever happened to them. How does that happen? How does someone go from holding a winning ticket worth millions to nothing? Joe Finance always says, the moment you think you have won is the most dangerous moment of the entire battle, because that is exactly when your guard drops. That is exactly when the real enemy walks in. And that enemy is not bad luck. It is not stupidity. It is not laziness. It is psychology. It is emotion. It is the way the human brain was never built to handle sudden wealth. And understanding it might be one of the most important financial lessons you ever learn, whether you play the lottery or not. Let us start with the very first moment, the win itself. Imagine the feeling. Your numbers come up, your heart is pounding, your hands are shaking, you cannot breathe. And in that moment, your brain is flooded, absolutely flooded with dopamine, the same chemical that drives addiction, the same reward signal that makes gambling feel so compelling in the first place. But here is what nobody tells you about that flood of dopamine. It sets a new baseline. Before the win, a good day might have been a promotion at work, a nice dinner out, your kid doing well in school. Those things produced enough dopamine to make life feel meaningful and rewarding. After the win, those things produce almost nothing because your brain has been reset. The bar for what feels good has been raised to a level that ordinary life simply cannot reach anymore. You think you're in paradise. You think everything is finally perfect, but your own nervous system is quietly rewriting what normal feels like. And when the illusion fades, and it always fades, ordinary life feels unbearable by comparison. Psychologists call this hedonic adaptation, the idea that human beings adapt to every new level of circumstances, good or bad, and return to a relatively stable baseline of happiness. Which means the $10 million does not make you permanently happy. It makes you temporarily euphoric, and then it makes ordinary life feel like a punishment. That is the first trap, and most people walk straight into it before they even cash the check. Now let us talk about what happens in the first 30 days after a major lottery win, because this window is where the financial destruction almost always begins. The phone starts ringing. Family members you have not heard from in years, old friends who suddenly remember you exist, neighbors, coworkers, acquaintances with business ideas, strangers who somehow found your number. And every single one of them has a story, a need, a pitch, an emergency, a dream that just needs a little help to get off the ground. This is what Joe Finance would recognize immediately as a coordinated attack, not one enemy coming at you, but 20 from every direction, all at once, each one targeting a different weak point: your guilt, your loyalty, your love, your ego, your need to be seen as generous. And here is the psychological trap that springs in that moment. Most lottery winners, especially working-class winners, people who grew up without money, people who know what it feels like to struggle, feel an overwhelming and completely human sense of guilt about having so much when the people around them have so little. So they give. Generously, immediately, without structure, without limits, without any financial plan whatsoever. They pay off their sister's mortgage, they buy their best friend a car, they give their parents $100,000, they fund their cousin's restaurant idea. They hand out money the way you hand out candy on Halloween, freely, emotionally, with no thought of what comes after. And every single one of those gifts feels good in the moment. It feels like love, like loyalty, like finally being able to show the people you care about that you have got them. But what they do not realize, what nobody sits them down and explains, is that they are not just giving away money. They are giving away their future security in chunks, and those chunks add up terrifyingly fast. Generosity without wisdom is just a faster way to lose everything. Here's a number that will shock you. If you won $5 million tomorrow and put it in a standard savings account, which most people would not even do, at a modest interest rate, you would earn roughly enough to live comfortably without ever touching the principal. But the average lottery winner does not put it in a savings account. They spend it immediately on things that feel like investments but are actually liabilities. The big house, then the bigger house, because the first one suddenly feels too small for the new version of yourself you are becoming. The cars, multiple, because you deserve it, because you worked hard your whole life and now you finally can. The vacations, first-class everything, five-star hotels, experiences that cost more in a weekend than you used to make in a month. None of these things build wealth. Every single one of them destroys it, quietly, consistently, month after month in maintenance costs, property taxes, insurance premiums, and lifestyle expenses that seemed manageable when the balance was 8 figures, but become catastrophic once it starts declining. This is called lifestyle inflation, and it is one of the most vicious financial traps that exists because it feels like reward. It feels like you are finally living. It feels like what money is for. But what it actually is a one-way door. Because once you have lived at that level, once your children have gone to private school, once you have had the chef and the housekeeper and the vacation home, going back feels like failure. It feels like loss. It feels psychologically devastating in a way that going forward never did. So you keep spending to maintain a lifestyle your remaining balance can no longer support. You borrow to fill the gap. The debt grows, the wealth shrinks, and one day, the math stops working entirely. Now, I want to talk about something that does not get discussed nearly enough when we talk about lottery winners and sudden wealth: the identity crisis. Most people who win the lottery have spent their entire lives building an identity around work, around struggle, around being someone who earns things, who fights for things, who gets up every morning and grinds because that is what you do. That identity is not just a job description. It is the story of who you are. It is how you measure your own worth. And then suddenly, you do not have to work anymore. You do not have to struggle. Everything you spent decades building your sense of self around is just gone overnight. Joe Finance has talked about this at length. The journey is what builds the person, not the destination. And when the journey is suddenly over, when everything arrives at once without being earned, something inside breaks quietly. And the question that follows a sudden win, quietly, uncomfortably in the middle of the night when the excitement fades, is terrifying. If I don't have to work for it, who am I? If everything comes easy, what does any of it mean? A lot of lottery winners describe a profound emptiness that sets in after the initial euphoria, a purposelessness, a sense of floating through life without an anchor. And because they feel like they have no right to be unhappy, they have $10 million after all, they never talk about it. They never get help. They just medicate it with more spending, more parties, more stuff, more anything to fill the hole that the money itself created. Now let us talk about the people who got it right, because they exist. And what they did differently is not complicated, but it required something most people in the grip of sudden wealth cannot access: patience. The lottery winners who kept their money understood this. They told almost nobody. They sat on the information. They did not post it. They did not call everyone. They kept quiet and gave themselves time to breathe before making a single decision. They hired a fee-only financial advisor, not someone who earns commission on what they sell you, someone whose only incentive is to give you honest advice. They walked in and said, "Help me understand what I actually have here and how to make it last." They created a written financial plan before spending a dollar. How much goes into investments, how much into a trust, how much they would allow themselves to spend per year as a salary, because treating the winnings like a salary rather than a lump sum is one of the most psychologically powerful reframes a sudden wealth recipient can make. They learned to say no, not because they were selfish, but because they understood that saying yes to everything and everyone is not generosity, it is financial suicide dressed up as love. And most importantly, they gave themselves a waiting period before any major purchase, 6 months minimum before buying a house, a year before making any investment, because the brain in the immediate aftermath of a major windfall is not a reliable decision-making tool. The emotions are too loud, the pressure is too intense, the dopamine is still running the show. Joe Finance puts it simply: the real strength is in the pause, in the breath before the decision. Time is the antidote to bad financial decisions, and the people who kept their money knew that. Here is what this whole story is really about, and why it matters even if you've never bought a lottery ticket in your life. The psychology of sudden wealth is really just the psychology of money with the volume turned all the way up. And the lessons are the same whether you inherit money, sell a business, get a settlement, receive a bonus, or win the lottery. Money without financial literacy is just a countdown clock. It does not matter how much comes in. What matters is what you know about how to keep it, how to grow it, how to protect it from the emotions that will inevitably try to spend it all as fast as possible. Because here's the deep truth about why lottery winners go broke. It's not that they're bad people. It's that nobody ever taught them to be good with money. They grew up in the same financial education system the rest of us grew up in, which taught us nothing. absolutely nothing about investing, about compounding, about the difference between an asset and a liability, about tax strategy, about wealth preservation. And then one day, they are handed $10 million and expected to suddenly know things they were never taught. That is not a personal failure. That is a systemic one. Joe Finance built this channel around one idea, gathering knowledge and passing it forward so you walk into every financial decision knowing the terrain, knowing the enemy, knowing yourself. That is what today was about. Build your financial literacy now, before the money comes. Understand what an index fund is. Understand compound interest. Understand the difference between net worth and income. Understand what a liability actually costs you over time. Because the person who understands these things before the money arrives is the person who gets to keep it when it does. Create structure before emotion. Have a plan before you have the windfall. Because in the moment, you will not be able to think clearly. The plan you make today in a calm, rational state is infinitely better than the decision you make in the middle of euphoria and family pressure. And learn to sit with money. Learn to be still with it. To not rush, to not perform your wealth for others, to not confuse spending with deserving. Because the goal of money is not to be spent. The goal of real generational life-changing money is to be kept long enough to work for you instead of the other way around. 70% of lottery winners end up broke within 5 years. But the ones who do not, the ones who change their family tree, who build something that lasts, who use that moment of luck as a genuine foundation, they all had one thing in common. They understood that the money was not the miracle. What they did with the silence after the win, that was the miracle. Do not chase the big win. Chase wisdom. Chase understanding. Chase the kind of knowledge that cannot be taken away because it lives inside you. That is the real move. Not the lottery ticket, not the windfall, not the number in your account. The knowledge of what to do when it arrives. Go learn it before you need it. See you in the next one.